Elephant in the creator room. You've got two creators, right? Same exact niche, exact same style, but one gets stuck at 10,000 views forever, while the other is consistently hitting 500,000. What gives? Well, I'll tell you right now, it is rarely about charisma, and it's almost never luck. There is an actual underlying architecture to viral content, and by the end of this explainer, you're going to have the exact blueprint to fix your workflow and seriously scale your reach.
And that brings us to the magic number 80%. If you can engineer your content to hit an 80% average watch time, you are hitting the algorithmic jackpot. Literally, hitting this metric tells the platform to push your content to 10 times more people than something with a 40% watch time. So look, retention isn't just some vanity metric to stroke your ego. It is absolutely the key to explosive growth. So here's how we're going to break this all down today. First up, we'll dive into the science of viewer retention. Then we're covering how to master faceless storytelling, followed by some absolutely crucial short-form pacing tricks. After that, we'll build out a high-output automation system. And finally, wrap up with scaling the whole thing using Clippy AI.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the science of viewer retention and how you engineer a hook that actually holds attention.
You know as well as I do, the human brain loves to wander. That's exactly why algorithms heavily reward pattern interrupts. The numbers speak for themselves. Content without an open loop hook, it's sitting at a 49% average watch time. But add that open loop in, and boom, retention skyrockets to 72%. Why? It's all because of the Zeigarnik effect, which is really just a fancy way of saying we have this deep psychological itch to close unanswered questions. Creating that curiosity gap in your first few seconds, it literally gives you a 47% relative improvement.
And speaking of keeping people hooked, strategic B-roll is your next secret weapon. Because honestly, if you just feature 10 seconds of a static face, or you're trying to explain some highly abstract concept, your viewer's brain is going to check out. They're gone. But if you place B-roll at those exact dropout risk moments, you re-engage their drifting brain. You're spiking that average watch time from a totally mediocre 50% to a highly competitive 70%.
Moving right along to section 2, let's talk about mastering faceless storytelling. This is all about injecting emotion and narrative without ever turning on the camera. It's wild, but right now, faceless channels are hitting millions of subscribers. How? By borrowing proven narrative structures straight out of Hollywood. The absolute foundation of this is the classic 3-act structure. Step 1 is the setup. You're establishing the context and basically telling the viewer why they should even care. Step 2 is confrontation. This is where you build tension through non-obvious challenges. And step 3 is resolution, delivering that promised payoff. Honestly, building your explainer like a movie creates deep emotional investment, totally independent of having a charismatic face on screen.
And right alongside that structure, you absolutely need visual metaphors. Let's say you're trying to explain a tricky, abstract concept like compound interest. Please, whatever you do, don't just flash a boring spreadsheet. Show a snowball rolling downhill, getting larger and larger. You have to translate those invisible, complex ideas into immediately understandable, punchy imagery.
Okay, let's shift gears to section 3, short-form pacing tricks. Because stopping the scroll on TikTok, Reels, and Shorts is a whole different beast.
Look, short form is easily the most ruthless environment on the internet. People are making keep or scroll decisions in literal milliseconds. Burn this number into your brain, 1.5. Eye tracking studies actually show that 73% of viewers decide whether to swipe away or stick around in a tiny 1.5-second window. If your absolute best visual or statement isn't happening right then and there, you're already invisible.
And get this, 85% of short-form viewing happens totally on mute, which means your text overlay, that is your narrator. So, what are the golden rules here? Keep it to a max of 3 to 5 words visible at any one time. Use super high contrast, white text with a thick black outline. Stick to really clean sans serif fonts so it's readable in a flash. And importantly, keep each phrase up for just 1.5 to 3 seconds to keep that pacing feeling snappy and alive.
Then we've got something really cool called loop engineering. Short-form algorithms absolutely love total loop plays. If you can design your ending so it visually and seamlessly connects straight back to the beginning, the viewer will often rewatch the whole thing without even realizing it restarted. That continuous algorithmic replay signal, yeah, it's basically rocket fuel for your distribution.
So that brings us to section 4, the high-output automation system. This is where we talk about multiplying your productive capacity.
Because creating one great piece of content is awesome, sure. But scaling that requires a system. Otherwise, you're going to burn out fast. Enter the content repurposing loop. Day 1 is your heavy lifting, filming in your main edit. Day 2 is strictly focused on extracting those short-form clips. Day 3, you move over to written repurposing, like turning your transcripts into blogs or pins. Finally, days 4 through 7 are all about scheduled distribution. By sticking to this timeline, you can systematically turn a single 15-minute piece of content into 20 to 30 derivative pieces everywhere. A huge part of making that system actually work is eliminating technical bottlenecks. Think about it. Manually scrubbing through raw footage just to chop out awkward pauses, deep breaths, and filler words, that takes 20 to 40 minutes per edit. But letting AI remove that silence knocks that entire grueling process down to 2 to 3 minutes. Not only does it dramatically tighten up your pacing, but it gives you literal hours of your life back. Which perfectly segues into our final section, part 5, scaling with Clippy AI, and executing these 20 techniques in half the time. Let's be real, applying every single one of these techniques manually is just exhausting. But 89%, let that sink in for a second, that is the staggering monthly time reduction creators are seeing when they stop doing everything by hand and start letting a specialized AI tool handle the pacing, the looping, and the tedious editing for them. When you actually map the math out over a whole month, it is mind-blowing. Executing a high-output schedule manually takes roughly 120 hours of just sitting there staring at a screen. Using AI execution, it brings that down to 13.3 hours. Reclaiming over 106 hours every single month is literally the difference between being a stressed out, overworked freelancer and actually running a scalable $20,000 a month media empire.
Now, don't panic. You don't need to do all of this at once. Your content format dictates your priority. If short form is your jam, focus heavily on hooks, text overlays, loops, and fast silence removal. If you're doing long form, you really want to lean into those open loops and strategic B-roll. And if you're rocking faceless content, your absolute lifeblood is visual metaphors and narrated data. Just focus your energy exactly where it yields the highest return for what you're making.
So to bring us full circle, back to that question we started with, the source material really hits the nail on the head here. It says, the difference between creators plateauing at 10,000 views and those breaking through to 500,000 plus is rarely niche selection or charisma, it's editing craft and production systems. Seriously, it is not about getting lucky, it's about systems. So I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative question to think about today. Are you building a scalable content system, or are you just crossing your fingers and hoping your next upload gets lucky? It is time to take control of the metrics, put these techniques to work, and start engineering your own growth. You've got this.